Shifting focus to the broader African market, private wealth markets across the continent are in expansion territory, with the millionaire population expected to balloon by 65% over the next 10 years. This is according to the 2025 Africa Wealth Report, which highlights South Africa as the current leader of the continent's big five wealth markets, followed by Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, and Kenya. Dominic Volek, Group Head of Private Clients at Henley Partners, joins us to unpack the findings of the report in greater detail. Dominic, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. It's also really interesting to see that you rank the growing numbers of millionaires in the continent as a better measure of how well the country is doing. Talk me through the thinking behind that, because some other people would just use GDP figures.
Yeah, so we believe GDP is a rather static way of looking at growth and look at private wealth, rather, the movements of not only millionaires, but also centimillionaires and billionaires. And so we look at the population of those across the world, really, and of course, particularly with Africa, with this report, because when these people move or build wealth, they're typically entrepreneurs and business owners, and of course, that has a significant economic impact on the countries that they're inhabiting.
And talk to me about Africa's ability to attract these millionaires. Are these wealthy people of African descent, or are we seeing more of millionaires from the US, the UK, Europe moving into Africa?
It's a bit of both. I would say it's primarily of African descent. You know, Africa as a continent has significant wealth creation opportunities. If we look at the main industries that are expected to sort of be behind this growth, you're looking at fintech, ecotourism, software development is one that's come up more recently, healthcare, biotech, media and entertainment, and then of course also wealth management for these individuals. So there's a lot of wealth creation opportunities. There are also those that have made their wealth in Africa and have moved to Europe, or in more recent times to the UK, who are returning as things and economic conditions and other geopolitical events happen, like changes to the non-dom tax regime in the UK, has seen a lot of returning millionaires as well.
And I was about to ask you then whether policies, regulation within Africa are supportive of these millionaires coming back into the country and developing businesses, hiring some of the people within the country as well, and creating employment.
Yeah, it definitely plays a critical role. Another area where Africa is maybe a little bit slow to the industry, but definitely starting to pick up pace, is the investment migration industry. So if you look at a lot of the countries globally that have attracted millionaires, they typically have some form of either citizenship by investment or residence by investment program in place. And while wealthy, successful Africans have often participated in these from an outbound perspective, there's a number of countries in Africa now that start to launch their own investment migration programs to attract foreigners back into the countries to realize those opportunities.
And what do those investment programs look like here in Africa? What countries are championing those initiatives?
So Mauritius is probably the standout example. So for many years, they've had a very attractive residence by investment program. There's a couple of options available, but one of the more popular one is real estate. So through the investment of real estate, you can acquire the right to reside in that country. More recently, Sao Tome and Principe, which is probably maybe not known to many people, but this is a small African country that has just recently launched a citizenship by investment program. So they can take different forms, but typically the government will look at specific sectors where they're trying to raise foreign direct investment. And to attract these millionaires, they offer either residence or citizenship for investment into the country.
And with that being said, would you say that the continent, Africa, is steadily becoming a hub for global wealth?
Very much so, and really starting to compete on the global stage. I think if we look at the typical wealth centers around the world, from a Swiss private banking, London, Singapore, I'm currently in Dubai, and the UAE also starts to compete, but it does take a number of years to build the infrastructure around that. And, we see South Africa continuously at the top of the list in terms of the number of millionaires calling that home, which has a very robust financial infrastructure that these millionaires can make use of.
And just on that, are we seeing a more centralized approach when it comes to where these millionaires are living on the continent? You mentioned South Africa as a key market, as a key country where you find millionaires, billionaires. Does South Africa have the largest share in that sense, or are we also seeing some other countries coming to play where we are seeing perhaps the likes of a Nigeria, a Kenya, maybe attracting more millionaires?
Yeah, so South Africa has been sort of top of the list for a while and still holds the lion's share. So 34% of the continent's millionaires still call South Africa home. In fact, at 41,100 millionaires, South Africa holds almost the equivalent of the next top 4 countries, as you mentioned earlier, being Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, and Kenya. But that is changing. Mauritius has had the strongest growth over the past decade, 63% increase in its millionaire population. And you have new centers like Rwanda and Morocco that are also seeing large increases. And at the same time, some of the sort of historical powerhouses like Nigeria, their millionaire populations are actually contracting. And so that is a factor of millionaires leaving to a certain extent, but also, the local currency depreciation against the dollar. Because when we're talking about millionaires here, we're talking about dollar millionaires, not sort of rands or kwacha or something else.
It's also interesting to see the shifts that are also playing out on a city level, right? We are still seeing a lot of the millionaires in Johannesburg, but of course we are still we're seeing a migration, a shift into Cape Town. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, exactly. So at a city level, Johannesburg still holds the crown with 11,700 resident millionaires. But the Cape Town and the broader Cape region is certainly expected to take over that probably by 2030. So if you look at the Cape, you've got areas like the Cape Wineland region, which includes Stellenbosch, as well as Paarl and Franschhoek. And so these areas are seeing significant inflows. Cape Town itself, as well as the Whale Coast with Hermanus, a lot of inflows coming from Johannesburg, but also from Europe and the UK as well.
And I think that it's important to also just highlight the duality of it all. While yes, the amount of millionaires are growing, there's still inequality among people. Just using SA as an example, where close to 40% of the population doesn't have jobs. I guess then that further illustrating that wealth lies in the hands of a few people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is this unfortunate sort of disparage that exists. But of course, as I said, these millionaires, when they come in, they do bring industry and job creation with them, and of course increase the tax base, which is important for countries as well.
And I mean, the growth doesn't seem to be stopping as you expect the continent's millionaire population to grow by over 65% in the next decade. Walk us through the analysis behind that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's really driven by those sort of key industries where these individuals are really starting to expand and start businesses. I mentioned earlier other industries like e-commerce, green tech, rare metals, mining. So these are big drivers of the economy. And as we see these millionaire populations growing, so will the hopefully the opportunities and employment that comes with that.
And just from, I guess, an economic perspective, considering that these millionaires have been in some of the countries in Africa for quite some while, have we started seeing that playing out in the economy?
Yeah, I believe so. You can sort of track how the movement of private wealth into certain countries has a direct impact on that. We have our private wealth migration report that looks at these inflows and outflows globally. And if you look at South Africa as an example, historically has seen net outflows of millionaires from a global perspective, but that is slowing, which is a very good sign.
All right, let's leave it there. Dominic, thanks so much for your time and just unpacking that report for us. Now, that was Dominic Volek, Group Head of Private Clients at Henley Partners.